Hello. All right. Today is chapter 15. Yeah. The man who wore sunglasses at night. None of us spoke much as we drove downtown. I have to admit that Taylor's absence had dulled my excitement. I think even Austin was upset. When we got to the aquarium, my mother looked at me and smiled sadly. Let's have a good time, okay? Okay, I said. Even though it was a weekday, the aquarium was running a family night special, so the place was crowded. The busiest exhibit by far was the sharks, with their cold, unblinking eyes and their teeth barred beneath them, gliding through the water just inches from the tank's glass, as if death were only a few inches away from you. I suppose that's how I felt about everything right now, as if something bad were circling me, just waiting to bite. I soon discovered that Austin was feeling the same way. "Do you think Taylor's safe?" he asked me. "I don't know." "Do you think we are?" "Not if she isn't." It was hard keeping my mind on the exhibits. The three of us wandered over by the electric eels. Electrophorus are ugly creatures with pocked skin, as if they'd all grown up with a bad case of acne. There were 3 eels in the tank, and the largest was about 6 feet long, with a dark gray back and an orange underbelly. There was a voltage meter connected to the outside of the tank with a red needle that occasionally bounced around as the eels sent out surges. Out of curiosity, I slid my hand over the metal corner of the tank and pulsed a little. The voltage meter jumped with my charge. Then, to my surprise, the eels in the tank all swam to me, as if I had summoned them or called them over. Maybe I had. I turned back to see if my mother had seen this, but she was looking through her purse. As I looked at her, I wondered if I should tell her about my invitation to the academy. I wanted to, but I wasn't even sure where to start. A few minutes later, I walked over to her. Before I could say anything, Austin said to my mother, "Did you know that electric eels are not really eels?" "Really?" she replied, no doubt prepared for Austin's upcoming monologue. My mother always looked genuinely interested in what Austin had to say, which was probably one of the reasons he had a crush on her, which, by the way, still grosses me out. There's a species of gymnotiforms, also known as knife fish. Biologically, they're closer to the carp or catfish than an eel, and they breathe air, so they have to come up to the surface every 10 minutes. "I didn't know that," my mother said. "They're at the top of the food chain, which means they have no natural predators. In fact, even a baby electric eel can paralyze an alligator with its shock." I knew most of this already for obvious reasons. I had always taken great interest in electric eels. When I was 9, I used to write EEM, E-E-M, secret for Electric Eel Man, on the corners of my papers, as if they were my secret identity. Still, I had Austin talk. I let Austin talk. I think he would explode if I didn't. They're basically a living battery. 4/5 of their body is used in generating and storing electricity. They can provide a charge upward of 600 volts and 500 watts, which is powerful enough to be deadly to a human, though some experts claim they've produced up to 800 volts. "I'd hate to take a bath with one," she said, smiling. Or give a bath to one," I said. She looked at me and grinned. "When I was 3 years old, I accidentally gave her a shock while she was bathing me. It knocked her over. It was pretty much showers after that. Eels use their electric shock to stun or kill their prey, but they can also use low voltage like radar to see in murky waters. It's called electrolocation. It's how they find food. Speaking of eating, my mother said, "Is anyone getting hungry?" That was one way of shutting Austin up. "Is that a trick question?" he asked. "I'm hungry," I said. "Good," she said. "I'm starving. Off to Pizza Max." The pizzeria wasn't actually called Pizza Max. Its real name was Mac's Purple Pig Pizza Parlor and Piano Pantry, which is as dumb as it is long, but they have awesome pizza. My mother and I ate there the first week we lived in Idaho. The first few weeks later, when she asked me where I wanted to eat, I only remember the Max part. So the name stuck. We ordered 6 pieces of cheesy garlic bread, an extra large Max kitchen sink pizza, which has everything and you can imagine on it except anchovies, gross, and a cold pitcher of root beer. While we were eating, my mom asked me, "What do Taylor's parents do?" "Her dad is a police officer. Her mom works at a travel agency." My mom nodded. "She's a really nice girl. I hope she comes around again soon." "I hope she does too," I said. "Still like your watch?" my mother asked. I think she just wanted to see me smile again. I held up my arm so she could see that I was wearing it. "Love it." I could tell this made her happy. She looked into my eyes. "Are you feeling okay?" "Yeah," I said. "You're kind of quiet tonight." I was never really good at hiding things from my mother. I guess I just have a lot on my mind. "Are you still upset about Taylor?" I shrugged. "A little." She put her hand on my shoulder. "Things don't always go as planned, do they? But in the end, they seem to work out." "I suppose so," I said. "I hope so." We had been at Pizza Max for nearly an hour when Austin excused himself to go to the bathroom. My mother smiled at me, then slid around the vinyl seat to our booth to get closer. "Honey, what's wrong? You're really ticking." I slowly looked up at her. "Mr. Dawson called me down to his office today." Her brow fell. "Oh? What happened?" "Nothing happened. I got offered a scholarship." A smile crossed her face. "What kind of scholarship?" "Is it to this really prestigious school in California?" Her smile grew even larger. "Michael, that's wonderful. What's the name of the school?" I was relieved to see her happy. "The Elgin Academy." Her smile immediately vanished into looking of fear. Did you say Elgin?" Her expression frightened me. "Yeah? In Pasadena?" "How did you know that?" I asked. She turned pale, like she was going to be sick. "Mom, what is it?" "We need to go," she said, her voice quivering. We need to get Austin and leave now." "Mom, what's wrong?" "I can't tell you here." She looked at me intensely, her eyes dark with fear. "Michael, there's more to this than you know. Your father—" Just then Austin returned. "I'm ready for another frosty mug of root beer," he said. I looked up at him. "We've got to go," I said. "Right now?" "Right now," my mother said. Something came up. It was dark outside when my mother paid the bill. We were walking out to our car. Then Austin said, "Wait, I forgot my jacket." "Hurry," my mom said to him as he turned to run back inside. We continued walking to the car. My mother was unlocking the car door when a man appeared between our car and the truck next to it. His clothes were dirty and worn, and his face was partially cloaked in a dark gray hoodie. He said to my mother, "Excuse me, do you have $1?" My mother looked at him and said, "Of course." My mother always helped others. She lifted her purse. When my mom's head was down, the man pulled a gun from the hoodie's pouch. "Just give me the purse." My mother dropped her keys on the ground. "Okay," she said, her voice pitched. "You can have it. You don't need the gun." "Shut up," he said. "Just give it to me. Shut your mouth. If anyone screams, I shoot." "Don't talk to my mother like that," I said. He pointed the gun at me. He looked nervous. He was shaking. "I'll shoot you first." "Please," my mother asked, "just take the money." She handed her purse to him. "Just take it. There's credit cards and cash, and you can have it all." He cautiously reached out and took the purse from her, the gun still shaking in his hand. He backed off again. "I want the car too," he said. "Give me your keys and back away." "I dropped the keys," my mother said. "They're right there. I'm going to pick them up." "You don't move," he said, pointing the gun at my mother's chest. "You," he said to me. "Give me the keys." I looked at him, and then my mother. "Bring them to me now, and I won't shoot your mother." Okay," I asked. I crouched down and lifted the keys, then slowly walked towards him. About a yard away from him, I turned back and looked at my mother. "What are you doing?" he said angrily. "Give me the keys." My mother guessed what I was thinking. She shook her head. I don't know which way. I looked back at the man. Maybe I wanted too many superhero movies, but if there was ever a moment to use the power, it was now. I could stop him from taking our car and my mother's purse. I was handing him a ring of metal. All I had to do was surge. I took another step forward and then slowly reached out with his keys. His hand shot out and grabbed them. The instant he touched the keyring, there was a loud snap and a yellow spark that briefly lit up everything around us. The man screamed out as he collapsed to the ground. I never shocked anyone so hard before, and there was a pale mist of smoke in the air. The man wasn't moving, and for a moment I wondered if I had killed him. It seemed that time stood still. I looked at my mother, wondering how she'd react. She was staring at the man on the ground. The silence was broken by a deep voice. "Well done, Michael." I quickly turned around. I have no idea where he came from, but a man was now standing just a few yards from us. He was sharply dressed in a tan suit with an orange silk tie. Even though it was dark, he wore thick-framed glasses. His hair, dark brown with sideburns, was nicely styled. He looked at the mugger, then back up at me, and lightly clapped. Really, that was impressive. What was that? 900? 1,000 volts? I looked at my mother, and then back at him anxiously. "Who are you?" my mother asked. "A friend, Sharon. A friend and admirer of Michael's, and his gift." My mother and I exchanged glances. "Yes," he said, smiling, "I know all about it. As a matter of fact, I know more than you do." Just then the thief groaned, and I looked down at him. He was struggling just to lift his head. As I watched him, anger flooded through my body. If I had ever wondered if my electrical powers were somehow connected to my emotions, there was no doubt it was now, and I felt power surging through me like I'd never felt before. I looked down at my hands. Electricity was sparking in blue arcs between my fingers, something I've never experienced. "It's an emotional reaction," the man said. "Fear, anger, hate, the powerful stuff causes your nervous system to react. It's particular, isn't it? Normal people respond with adrenaline, but special people, like you, react electrically." My mother put her hand on my arm. "Michael, we need to go." I didn't move. "How do you know all this?" I asked. The man took a step forward. "Michael, we've been looking for you for a long time. Almost since you were born." "Michael!" my mom said. To reunite you with others. Others? You're not alone, Michael. There's more of your kind than you think. More than just your friend Taylor. His mention of Taylor startled me. I'd like to introduce you to some of them right now. Behind you is Zeus. Suddenly, a young man was standing next to my mother. He was good-looking, but unkempt. He had long, greasy blonde hair and wore Levi's jacket with the sleeves cut off and no shirt underneath. Even though he was only my age, he had a tattoo on his chest of a lightning bolt. My mother looked at him anxiously. And this is Nichelle, I think. A young woman stepped up behind the man. She wore black clothing and dark, thick makeup, mostly black or dark purple, the way goth kids do. Both kids looked about my age, though Zeus was taller than me. Zeus, show Miss Vey what you can do. He smiled darkly. Glad to. He lifted his hands, and electricity flew through his fingers to my mother in blue-white strikes. My mother screamed and collapsed, just like the man I had just shocked. Mom! I dropped to the ground next to her, cradling her head in my arms. Why did you do that? I shouted. She'll be okay, the man said. It just took the wind out of her. My eyes darted back and forth between the three of them. Who are you? I'm your friend, the man said softly. Nichelle? The girl started towards me, and she approached. I noticed that the Zeus guy took a few steps back, as if he were afraid of her. As the girl neared me, I started to feel different. Everything was out of place. The man, the two kids, my mother on the ground. It was all like a bad dream. I felt weaker. The electricity stopped arcing between my fingers. Then I began to feel dizzy. I looked at the girl, and she looked into my eyes with a strange, emotionless stare. I couldn't even make sense of it. Who these people were and why they were there. More importantly, what they wanted with us. With each step the girl took towards me, my dizziness increased. Then my head began to pound like a bass drum. I put my hand on my forehead as my vision began to blur. Take it easy on him, Nichelle, I heard the man say. He's not used to it. Suddenly, I heard Austin's voice, blended into what seemed like a collage of other sounds. I looked down at my mother. She was still, but gazed at me. I saw her lips move, but I couldn't hear her. I couldn't hear anything other than the loud buzzing in my ears. I think she said, I love you. It seems that's what she said. It's the last thing I remember before passing out. Wow, this is intense.